a chef. I came from a family who values academics and things like that, and I was kind of told a little bit, you know what, hospitality possibly, in not as many words, but hospitality is perhaps more of a sort of a trade university piece of paper as easily, and where is it going to lead to down the line? So when I left school, I was working at McDonald's. I was starting to get interested in things like that. Started working in a restaurant, a steakhouse. At McDonald's, I'd taken it upon myself not just to learn service, but to learn back, to do everything. And I was actually on a management trajectory at McDonald's. So much so that when I went to work in restaurants, my nickname was the Macca's Kid. Because everything I probably related was all to do with McDonald's. So even in my current business, I have this philosophy: if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. That came from McDonald's thing. So I actually didn't really drink coffee until I was about 19. And was reflecting on earlier, I was the guy who could spin a jug of milk or foam up a big jug of milk, and you were hero territory if you could scoop it out with a spoon and turn it upside down like Jamie Oliver does with his egg whites. Everyone thought you were a baller. So pretty quickly, I became the sort of the chief go-to guy for the 10-second extraction giant chino thing. And on Saturday nights, they'd pull me out of the kitchen to make coffees for the customers. So that, I suppose, started a little bug fire in me. By that time, I was just using, in that instance, coffee that was more evolved than the purely pre-ground. Decaf was hidden away in a cupboard somewhere, pre-ground. But older expo bar, more menial type machines compared to what you go manage a cafe. Suburb. Started working in this cafe. So all of us have gone from, and something that's stuck with me, and I'll share a few of these stories anecdotally, is I remember there was one big differentiation. I need this much foam on a latte in an old school glass, and if you could make a cascade, you were still a baller. So, and then this concept that this customer would say to me, a coffee with a pattern would taste better. I was like, well, you're just being fancy, and but I tried really hard to try and meet that requirement. And it's little things like that sort of stick in your brain, and then 10 years later you reflect on that and you go, well, actually that's led me to where I am today. So, I worked there for a little while. After a little while, that business was kind of folding up. A few people had moved along. I'd become very curious about the coffee industry. I was reading a lot of magazines. The next speaker who's coming up, I was reading about people like him in Benzene magazine. I would pore over them. I had subscriptions. And I'm blessed in sort of suburban Sydney that was a bit of a sort of new to where I grew up, just below the Central Coast. And it was probably at least 10 years beyond where that community was willing to accept. But it was a cool little space. I worked with some really, really fantastic baristas. And through to what 1 year, it seemed that I was, really had this bug for coffee. And I sort of, 18 months, 2 years into my journey, I went along and just absorbed all the information I could get out of it. I was the annoying guy that hung around half an hour after the thing asking more questions, and I just wanted information. I just wanted to know things. So while I was working at that cafe, someone who's a very dear friend of mine now and a Brisbane resident, her name was Corinne Tweedale at the time. She's now got a slightly different name. She was Australia's first representative for. She was working for Dames Coffee, and she came in as our rep. And I remember I made her a coffee, and I knew who she was, and I was a bit starstruck. It was a bit like, if you're working in the bar in Brisbane and Phil DeBella walks in, and you're going to bloody clean your head and make sure that, you make him a nice coffee. And then if he tells you that it's good, you're like, shit, Phil DeBella told me I made a good coffee. And she complimented me on my coffee, and that kind of went, well, 50 customers today could tell me I made the best coffee they've ever tried, but you told me I made a really good coffee. That's pretty amazing. So, look, from there, some of those early journeys didn't really last that long, for different circumstances. It wasn't for my desire to move on. It was just, I was young. I needed to kind of, earn some money. And for quite a while during that period, I had two jobs at different times. I was working in a cafe in the day, restaurant at night. Demystified the coffee house in lots of ways. And perception from me as a coffee person, I was like, well, Glory Jeans, they just load everything with syrup, right? And then I went, well, that's a bit strange. Like, why are so many people wanting to do that? So I got a job at a Glory Jeans store in Rhodes, and it was a new store, new shopping centre, and they set me some pretty aggressive challenges, which I did my very best to meet. But interestingly for me at the time, as a coffee consumer, as a barista, as a budding barista, actually I discovered that because my introduction to coffee was actually through, I was quite a frequent buyer at Glory Jeans, in my teenage years. Irish nut cream mocha was my go-to back then. No, not skim milk. I once drank one. I once picked it up. This is why it's really important to grab customers' names. I once picked one up presumptuously, thinking it was mine, and it had soy milk. And I remember at the time, soy milk was the most important thing to me, and I was just like, "Wow, this is gross!" But I was too embarrassed to go back and ask for them to make it again because it was my mistake. So look, I worked there for a little while, and I built that business, that particular store. I built that business up about 25% in 6 months in terms of coffee volume, just through being friendly and reliable. I was the only guy that worked in my store. I had 25 staff that were all young girls, so we had a very young, energetic kind of crew, and a really good attitude. And it taught me a lot of really positive lessons. During the time I was working there, the franchisees got an opportunity to open the store at Fox Studios. So just in the city near the football stadiums there in the entertainment quarter. And at the time, that was kind of a new developing kind of go-to hub. And we opened the store. I'm getting to an important story, a life lesson story. We opened the store, myself and two of the other store managers, they kind of deployed us there. So we were running the other stores. I was only actually going to my store one day. I really wanted to. It was obviously, when you understand a little bit about franchising, that would have been a very sought after site. There would have been a lot of pressure on it to do really positive numbers and be really successful. So we opened that store about 2 weeks before Christmas, 2004. I was saying to one of my colleagues here this earlier, it was probably the most boring Christmas I've ever had. I worked till about 9:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, went home, had Christmas Day, didn't drink anything. I was 21. I wasn't really into drinking much then. But just was very stressed because there was all this pressure that, the head office people were going to come and all these sorts of things the next day. And I was opening at 5:30 on Boxing Day. So, Boxing Day was very busy. I think I worked the following day. And on the 28th, Green Day had a concert at the football stadium. So I think I went to work about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. It was pretty cruisy, not too busy. And the Green Day concert started about music for a few hours. You get the odd customer coming through. And this was the point of the story. What happened next was probably one of the... and that finished. And we were under strict instruction. It was myself, two other store managers, and two other really strong staff. And near the football stadium is the Fox and Hound pub. And right up the other is open. So anybody under 18 is out the door and down past the strike.